Alright, so this is our notes on rotations. This is going to be lesson 3.3. We've been talking about translations. We talked about transformations, and now we're talking about rotations. And rotation is a translation that moves all points a certain angle or direction of rotation. So it can be an angle like this may be, I don't know, almost 90 degrees, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but about 90 degrees. But it can be clockwise, we could go counterclockwise, and so on. So it can be an angle, or it can also be a direction. But that's what a rotation is talking about. Rotating something around a fixed point. Some important terms to understand are center of rotation, and then the center of rotation is talking about a fixed point around which shapes or other objects move in circular motion to a new point. So if we're talking about the origin, rotating something about an origin, that's the center of rotation. It can also be a specific point. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the origin, it can be a specific point. What's nice though, if it is the origin, there's some nice functions that we can use and it makes it really easy. Okay. So then also we have something angle of rotation. So this is talking about the angle through which the original image or the pre-image is rotated to form the new image. And so you might have, when you're talking about a rotation, you're talking about having two important concerns. What is it rotating about, the center of rotation, and then how much is it rotating, the angle of rotation. So if we look at an example, I've already done the example and I'll kind of explain it to you. So this one is where you draw one. So this is, I'll say this is image A and this is image B. Okay, and this is where you have this original image and it says draw a rotation of 75 degrees around point K. So we have this point, we're going to rotate 75 degrees about that point. The basic steps to do that is you start at each point. So here we have point A, we have point B, and we have point C. So then for each point, we start with one of them, and then we draw a segment from A to K, which is the point it's rotating about. So this could be any point, but if it's rotating about a specific point, you do one point for the triangle at a time. So you draw the line segment. You then put like a protractor on there, and you line it up where it's supposed to be. Figure out where that angle is, you mark it, and then figure out what the length is from this A to this point of rotation, and then you figure out where that new point should be. You do that for A. This is right here. You do that for B. This is it right here, and then you do that for C. Show it. I kind of did it quick, but it'd be right there. Okay, and then once you have the points in there, you form the new shape, and this is A prime, B prime, C prime, like that. Okay, that's an example of just drawing it out by hand. You can just measure it, put in the angle, draw the new points, form the new shape. That's just a drawing. But there's also functions to help explain rotations as well. And these are much easier because they really just tell you where to put the new points on a coordinate plane, x's and y's. So we have three concerns. And here we're always going to be talking about rotating about the origin. So if you're rotating about the origin, and the origin is just, we have the coordinate plane, the center part right here, that's the origin, where it all starts. Y positive goes this way, y negative, x positive, but it all starts at the origin or 0. So we have some specific conditions. So what we do is, if you want to rotate something 90 degrees about the origin, we have the original points, whatever they are. Let's say they're 2, 1. Okay. So what you do is you take those points, and to form the new x's and y's, you then switch y, whatever the point y is, you multiply it by -1, and then it then becomes the x point, and then the x point then just takes the place of the y point. So here, if we were doing this, it would be, this one would become the x, it would be -1, because it would also be multiplied by a -1, and it's 1 to start with, and then we would just take the 2, and it would be right there. So if we had this point, whatever that is, 2, 1, we want to rotate it 90 about the origin, we you would just switch the points and multiply the new x point, which is the old y point, by negative 1. Okay, that's a 90. To get a 180 degree rotation, you just take whatever the x's and the y's are and you make both negative. So it was the same thing. It was 2, 1. We would then just make it negative 2, negative 1. So, and then redraw that point. If it's a 270 degree rotation, we would then make the x, we'd swap the points, right? We're always, not always going to do that, but with the 90 and the 270, we're going to swap the points. So again, let's say it was 2, 1. We would then swap the points, so now the points now become for the x1, which is the y, and then 2, which is the x, but then the x becomes multiplied by negative 1, and it would now be from 2 to 1, it would be 1, negative 2. So those are the three important ways to rotate about the origin. So I'm going to give an example of one of these rotations around the origin that I was talking about in the notes. And here is one, a 90 degree rotation about the origin. So again, we have to remember what is the function that we use. And if we see it on here, we see the function is whatever your points are, x, y, you then switch the points and then y times negative 1. So then if we look at them, we have 1, 1. So they switch. It really doesn't matter, right? They're 1 and 1. So, but then the y becomes a negative 1, and then it becomes the x. So the new points are negative 1, 1. Here, again, they switch. So the y becomes the x 5. The x becomes the y 4. We have it over here. Then the y is multiplied by negative 1. So we get negative 5, 4. Then the last one, r, it's 5 and 1. They're going to switch. You're going to have a 1 and a 5. Then you multiply the y by a negative 1. You end up with negative 1, 5. So then I put these points in here. Negative 1, 1. That's that one. That is really p prime now. I'll just put that in there. And then we have q prime, negative 5, 4. Let's put that right there. And then we have r prime, negative 1, 5. So we'll put that up there. And then we have the 90 degree rotation, right, about the axis. And if I just draw the lines in, let me do that real quick. And there we are. Okay, there's our 90. So P is still rotating, like here's that 90. If we measured this, we should see a 90 degree movement. And then if we measured Q, same thing, 90 degree. And then if we did R, 90 degrees. And of course it's going to get greater, the amount you move, because it's further away from the origin. But it's still, if you measured it, it should be 90 degrees. So that's an example of that. And maybe I can show you one more with this. So if we try that same shape, and instead of doing the 90 degree, which we just did, again, looks like this, right? We could then take that and do 180 degrees. And we would think if it's 180 degrees, halfway, this shape would end up over here, right? And if you remember the function we gave, so whatever the x's and the y's are, you just multiply them by a negative. So if we went back to what they should be, if we went to the p is 1, 1, so p prime, we can actually put them down, put them up here. So p prime is going to be negative 1, negative 1. Q prime is going to be negative 4, negative 5. And then R prime is going to be negative 5, negative 1. And then if we just take those points and put them in, so we got negative 1, negative 1, it'd be right there. That's P prime. Let's put that right there. And then Q prime is negative 4, negative 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right there. And then we have R is negative 5, negative 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and negative 1 would be right there. And then we just need to connect the dots. And you can kind of see I did that here. So then we have the new figure with P prime, R prime, and Q prime. and it looks like 180 degrees. So if we were to measure this angle, we would see 180 degrees. And that's 2 examples. I think you can handle these now, and I think you're probably ready to, in class tomorrow, to try some of the homework. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always put comments in the notes from YouTube, and I can look at those before class and see if you have any questions that we can go over. That really helps me. It'll probably help you too. And see you in class tomorrow.